Hey there, I'm Adam Bartholomew, and this is Cruising Maine. Let me just check and make sure we are live. We're having some technical difficulties here. Give me just a moment while we check this out and confirm our live stream here. Okay. Just going to go check over on Rumble. Okay. Main Street Media, Utah. Here it is. And we are live. Okay. 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Welcome to Cruising Maine. I'm Adam Bartholomew, and we are live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble in all the right places. And we are here to talk about some things related to Utah politics, the upcoming elections in 2024, and some general issues of the day, and maybe some ancient news as well. We're supposed to have a couple of guests here today, but one of them fell through, which was actually a good thing because I've been having some major technical difficulties and haven't been able to get the system working. But luckily, when, as they say in Canada, when in doubt, reboot. So that worked. So here we are, Main Street Media. We've partnered with them here in Utah. We want to give Utah's Main Street a voice, and we want to have an alternative to the mainstream media here in Utah. The mainstream media ecosystem is definitely lacking a conservative voice. It's lacking a conservative viewpoint, and it's also lacking some humor. We're going to try and bring some levity to the situation and just laugh a little bit. We need to. The way things have been going the last couple of years, I think that everybody needs to kind of step back and laugh a little bit. And so we're gonna try and tell some jokes. We might have some inappropriate humor. We might have some good laughs. But at the end of the day, we're gonna all leave here more informed and ready to make our voices heard and step up and be present and activated for the 2024 campaign season. One of the things I wanted to talk about going into episode 2 here of Cruising Maine was something that I missed on the last episode. On episode 1, I wanted to talk about the effort to overturn Utah's new flag, which I made a video about a year ago on this subject. There's some people working to gather signatures to overturn the new law for Utah's flag. Some people like it. I don't hate the new flag. It's not terrible, but I also like the old flag, and I don't like the idea of changing our history. I don't like the idea of tearing down our statues, which has been something that's happening. And this, no matter any way you shake it, the timing and the way that things have gone down related to this flag, it really has the same kind of feeling to a lot of people as the tearing down of our statues that happened during the 2020 riots. And it's been happening ever since then. It started before that, and it's been happening for a while. We have a real push here in our country to erase our history and tear down the things of the past that people aren't really happy about, that might be controversial. There might be some history related to America's founding and the the development of our nation that some people aren't comfortable with, that some people that people call problematic history, whatever that is. But I'm big on preserving our history, and I think that there's something to it when we talk about a flag designed by the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers versus a flag that many of us believe was designed by this a guy from Indiana that owns a flag company. And so that's been disputed. He's taking credit for it. I know that there's been some back and forth there, but we have restoreutahsflag.com, which is the website for the initiative. They're trying to get it on the ballot. The legislators got together, they spent $500,000, and they gave us a new flag. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people do like it. But overall, we just like a chance to vote on it. I know that a lot of people feel like we have a representative government for a reason, but it's not just for them to decide when we need new things like a flag. And everybody wants a chance to have their voice heard on this. And that's what the push behind this. People want to have the opportunity to vote on this flag. And the people at Restore Utah's Flag put out a message today. They said, don't trans Utah's flag. And they have a video of some people who made a trans version of the new Utah flag with the trans colors, and they're on the state capitol. But the bigger story here is that the people at the Flag Initiative say that they have gathered over 100,000 signatures, and the Lieutenant Governor's office is reporting a lower number than that. They're saying that whole packets are being thrown out. I'm not sure exactly where this information is coming from. There's some disputes over how the counting is being handled, so they're threatening to sue Deidre Henderson, the Lieutenant Governor, and the Lieutenant Governor's office over this over these signatures. But there are still a lot of people working on this. A lot of people in my area and a lot of people all around the state are spending a lot of time working on gathering these signatures. And so if you have time leading up to the caucus, this is something that people can do. They can get a packet, gather signatures in their neighborhood, and turn these in. We have a month left. I think it's by February 15th, the signatures need to be turned in. And if they have gathered over 100,000 signatures, then that's really close to getting their goal. So if you have time, definitely check that out, restoreutahsflag.com or Restore Utah Flag on Twitter. There's a Restore Utah Flag Facebook group where people can join and find out more information about this. Everybody wants their voice heard, and we're hoping that we can get this on the ballot. I know it's an important issue for a lot of people. So we're not sure if we're going to make it, but there's still time if people want to put in some effort there. Speaking of Dan McKay, a couple weeks ago we had an issue with the Salt Lake Tribune. Governor Cox came out, and he came out against diversity, equity, and inclusion for the first time in his administration. And he came out and said it's bordering on evil. And the Salt Lake Tribune, Brian Schott over there, decided that he wanted to write a story about this. And there was a few angles you could have gone, but the guys at the Tribune just got everything wrong on such an easy story to really blast Governor Cox. These guys got it wrong. So I want to talk about some of this fake news going on at the Salt Lake Tribune. Let's play the bumper for fake news.
I'd like to welcome the fake news media, which is back there. So here was the story by the fake news. They can make anything bad. Don't be rude. You are fake news. Sir, go ahead. They are the fake, disgusting news.
The fake news, they're at it again at the Salt Lake Tribune, Utah's premier fake news agency. So this is the tweet from Dan McKay, the flag guy. Nice segue into there from talking about the flag to now talking about this fake news from the Salt Lake Tribune. So they came out, they said, Governor Cox came out, he does this press event. He says, hey, the DEI statements, the diversity, equity, and inclusion statements from these universities are discriminatory and they're bordering on evil. So he gets blasted. And the story from the Salt Lake Tribune was that Governor Cox shares no evidence. So he comes out against diversity, equity, inclusion for once, which is great because he's actually been pushing this whole thing. And the angle that the Salt Lake Tribune, you would think if these guys, I mean, these guys are activists, they're anti-Republican. They're definitely more favorable to Spencer Cox. In the past, we've seen with other issues related to the elections and the release of the data, we've seen uh, things be released by these. You fill out a request to the state, and you get a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request. And we've seen that Deidre Henderson is on a texting basis with the reporter at the Salt Lake Tribune. But you would think the Tribune would have attacked Cox by saying, "Hey, this has been your thing, Spencer Cox. You have been the DEI governor, and now you're coming out saying that the universities shouldn't be promoting DEI," almost like do as I say, not as I do, because he's been the guy pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion. All you have to do is look back at you can go right to the governor.utah.gov website, and you can see here's Cox's first 100 days where he celebrates. You can see here, we signed one of the things you can see on the bottom where it has the two little people shaking hands, says that we signed the Utah Compact on Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And Governor Cox's wife, Abby Cox, has been at the forefront of pushing this DEI initiative. And one of the things I've talked about, I talked about on the last show, and I've talked about on Twitter and things, is the push to turn Utah blue, which is something that I'm going to be addressing really heavily on this show as we get more shows under our belt, is the push to turn Utah blue. And Governor Cox, whether it's on purpose or by accident, he's a big part of that. But he's now doing this thing where he's fainting to the right. He's pretending to be more conservative than he is in order to get reelected, because he knows he has to posture himself to be more conservative than he actually is. And so now he's going backpedaling against the stuff that he's been promoting in his administration for 3 years now. This guy's been pushing things like diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in not only our state legislature and the wording of laws, but also really heavily in our education. And Cox has spent, and his wife, Abby Cox, they've spent a lot of time pushing these initiatives. They've appointed somebody to work at the state level that deals specifically with this kind of stuff. These, a czar of ethnic studies or DEI, whatever it is, they have somebody in the administration this is their entire job. This has been one of Spencer Cox's biggest issues, is pushing DEI, and now he's backpedaling on this. And and Cox seems to be a great comment. Somebody just commented on here, says he seems to be sticking his finger in the air, seeing which way the wind is blowing. And so the Tribune, they come out, and instead of calling out Spencer Cox for pushing back against the very thing that he's been pushing for 3 years now, probably longer. He was probably pushing this stuff while he was lieutenant governor. Instead of calling him out for that, the fake news comes out and says that he shares no evidence for it. And Dan McKay, who a lot of people say Dan is like the prime example of a rhino, Republican in name only here in Utah. But even Dan McKay was able to go, and he says here, "Dear Salt Lake Tribune, a brief training on internet searching may be helpful. Here's what a 5-minute internet search did for me, but don't let me tell you how to do the news," or how to news, which is pretty funny. But he brings up these screenshots of a job posting and it has special instructions for candidates that are looking at this job. And it says right here, "We also require a 1 to 2 page statement that describes how the candidate will contribute to the professional community of the faculty and staff within the Division of Games. Specifically, the candidate should review the games.utah.edu equity, diversity, inclusion, and respond in their statement describing ways that their background, experience, and commitments relate to our values and goals, and will foster collaboration, inclusivity, and excellence in games teaching within the division. Submit this document under applicant. So this is a simple Google search. I'm sure Dan McKay found this in a matter of seconds. Here's another screenshot from it. One of the required documents to apply for this job at a local university, a statement outlining your plans to contributing to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion at Utah Valley University. So it was right there. And the news tries to make it out like it didn't exist. And then when they got called out, they immediately get called out by Dan McKay, Trevor Lee, and a bunch of other people in the Utah State Legislature. The Salt Lake Tribune, what do? They double down. Brian Shaw and the other journalist that was involved in this article, they double down, bending themselves over backwards to try and somehow justify this headline that Cox shares no evidence that colleges require DEI statements. It's just so funny. It's laughably bad, and there's a meme that goes around that says they're not sending their best. They really aren't. They're really not sending their best against us, and so it's so easily called out, and it's so easily disproven. But yet nobody does it, and we still grant access to these guys. I don't know why the Republican Party. I've talked to Chris Knoll about this. I've talked to other people in the party. I don't understand why people grant these guys so much power and authority. Why do Utah's politicians? Celeste Malloy just did it when she was running for Congress 2 months ago. When she was running in the special election, she just did the exact same thing. She granted an interview to the Salt Lake Tribune. And what did they do? They interviewed her I think they sat her down. They probably had to have had an hour's discussion. And all they did was twist her words against her and put out a hit piece using the interview material. Why do we continue to do this? Why do we allow these people access to all of our events? Why is there, why are these Tribune reporters showing up to our events and live tweeting everything and using the things that are said at these events against the candidates? We just continue to perpetuate this. So I thought that was pretty funny that Spencer Cox stepped in it, really, and he stepped in such a funny way. But the fake news chose to go at it and say that he doesn't provide proof when there's so much proof, and it's also one of Cox's biggest things. And this is one of the reasons that I wanted to start this show, was to address things like this, because it's so common where we run into these fake news scenarios. We run into this propaganda coming out of the mainstream media here in Utah, and we have these politicians like Spencer Cox fainting to the right in order to get reelected. And we've got a lot of great candidates right now. There's a lot of great candidates for governor. Hopefully we can get somebody better in the governor's seat, somebody who's going to really stand up for the people of Utah, and somebody that will stand up for girls in the state of Utah that are competing in these sports, and somebody that's not going to veto important bills protecting our youth. So hopefully we can get somebody better in there, and we need to get better people in all of the offices statewide, not just the governor's office. That means the state reps, the state legislature. I know that one of my neighbors down the road is running against Mike McKell. We definitely need to promote these candidates and get people involved at the local level. And one of the things that things have been so crazy over the last 3 years, ever since 2020, that one of the things that I've been talking about is county over country, just focusing on our local elections, because that's the place where we can make the biggest difference. If we donate $5 to President Trump's campaign, that I'm sure that might help something. But $5 is a drop in the bucket to these national campaigns, especially with the Republican Party. they're always asking for money, and I just don't, at the national level, I just haven't seen the any type of progress or the type of stuff that I'd like to see. So I would say if we can get people to donate money to local campaigns, there are small campaigns, grassroots candidates out there that really need that $5. And $5 can go to, in a small grassroots campaign, can go to pay for one sign. And one sign can really make a difference. And when you have a small campaign, all of the materials, I ran into this myself when I ran for office. My signs were constantly getting destroyed. And the $5 level, donating to these really small candidates at the local level, or if you don't have $5, taking an afternoon and going out and supporting a candidate in your local area, or stumping for a candidate, or becoming a delegate so you can vote for a specific candidate. That's one of the most important things we can do. And one of the local races here that's most important, and nationwide, anywhere you're at, one of the local races that's most important is the school board. And we need to have the best candidates on the school board ballots nationwide and here in Utah. And it's so important. We're talking about this DEI initiative from Spencer Cox. This stuff, not only is it in his first 100 days signing, some meaningless compact on racial equity, diversity and inclusion, but the this stuff's not just meaningless compacts like this from Spencer Cox. This stuff is coming down through our school system. It's coming down through the curriculum in our schools, and the buck stops at our state school board. That's why these races are so important. Getting the right people on the school board, somebody with a spine that's going to stand up and vote against these divisive curriculum that are coming through. And so the guest I want to bring on today is Carrie Bartholemew. She's running for state school board in District 13 here in Utah County against a sitting school board member named Randy Booth. Let me bring Carrie on here. Carrie, are you there?
I am, yes.
Thank you for joining us here live on Cruising Maine. You are running for state school board, Utah State School Board, District 13. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce your what you do, what makes you, the kind of the person to run for school board, and kind of tell us what got you interested in running for office in the first place.
Absolutely. Am I supposed to pretend I'm not your wife?
Also, this is my wife. She's get preferential treatment. This is what you call a donation in kind to by spending time on this. So, yeah, please take it away. Who are you,
Sure.
and why should people vote for you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a grassroots candidate who moved here from Seattle, Washington, because we believed that we would be seeking refuge for our son, that all of the divisive concepts that we were learning about in school would not be here, and basically that I could put my head in the sand, put my feet up, and go shopping. That had been the plan. and and we got here, and the first thing that I saw all the beautiful murals in the schools. But there was nobody available to show me around or answer my questions. In fact, in the two junior highs that I went to, it was students who were walking me around, and they couldn't answer any questions. So we found a wonderful charter school, and were successful there for a couple of years. And now we're facing the high school situation. And I have been I've been an advocate for the people of Nebo for the last 3 years, pretty much, since the first time I voiced any concern, which was, why is a school teaching that Ebonics, why is a teacher teaching that Ebonics is the official language of African Americans? For people who are listening, I am biracial. So I do bring a knowledge of diversity, but I am very much anti DEI. I know where it comes from, and I believe that it uses people, whether that's using people by their race or whether it's using people by their gender. I think that it's toxic, and the end goal is really to create students who are activists. We watched it in Washington. I was assaulted in Washington by a girl who could have been my niece. She looks so much like me. And she assaulted me because I was holding a sign that said, um, "Stop CRT. They are using us." And if you don't think CRT is in schools, I happen to kind of be, by default, an expert in it. I've been sent a lot of information all over, both internationally, nationally. I work with all of the people who tend to be some sort of a minority, whether that is Black or Jewish or Hispanic, um, who are very concerned about the division that we're seeing. Is that enough to start?
Yeah. What? We just had somebody put in a comment here, said, "Tell us what DEI is. Many are unaware."
Sure. DEI is, it sounds beautiful. Remember, so did BLM. Of course, Black Lives Matter. Every single life matters. DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But what I have found is that diversity never means diversity of thought. So, someone like me who has a viewpoint that is other than, um, what can I get out of this? My viewpoint is we should focus on the individual and help the individual achieve excellence. That is not welcome. So, my diverse thought, my diverse opinion doesn't matter. Equity is equal outcomes for everyone that's on the bottom. It looks a lot like socialism does in other countries, where those on the very top live like kings and the rest of us live like paupers. And and the one that what we're dealing with is educational equity. So what that means, you'll watch in a lot of blue states, and we're starting to watch it here. So what you're seeing in blue states is they got rid of letter grades, and they did this probably 5 years ago. So instead of having your A, B, C, D, and F, you would have one, two, three, and four. And if you had a three, that could be anywhere from an A, about an A minus, to a C. You have no idea. Your children have no idea how well you're doing. And for me, I would call the teacher and I'd say, "Can you give me more of an explanation?" And the teacher would say, "I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not allowed to." So
Hmm.
you have a child who thinks they're basically on a roll. And then when things get harder for them, they're wondering, what in the world just happened? So that's
Hmm.
equity and inclusion.
What's the?
Can I hit
What do you
inclusion
say
first?
to people like the Darlene McDonalds out there that say, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a great thing, and if you don't support bringing DEI into our school systems, then you are a racist, bigot, sexist, homophobe, whatever it is.
Okay, well, I start with follow the money. Darlene McDonald, if you want
Hang on,
to.
you're muted. What's going
Sorry,
on here? Something happened to your audio.
I haven't touched anything. Can you not hear me?
Uh-oh. We got a technical difficulty going on. Hang on, let me turn you off here. You there?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
It says I'm coming through, Adam.
Oh, Dwayne says you're coming through on their end.
Okay, perfect.
So
Okay,
hang
but
on a
you can't
second
hear
here.
me?
Well, maybe it's my
Hmm.
system.
All right, well, I'll just continue. Okay. He says it might be your speakers. All right. So you need to follow the money. The people who are pushing for diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's a lot of money. A lot of the money came through with pandemic funding. So remember, pandemic and George Floyd happened at the same time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you're seeing a lot of money coming through, and it's creating inclusive classrooms. So basically what happened is they created the problem and now they're bringing the solution in.
Okay.
Okay, you can't hear me enough.
I can hear you. I can
Okay.
hear you now. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So what I say to these people quite bluntly is that they're grifting. Now, that does not mean everybody who believes in DEI is grifting. There is a lot of guilt, whether that should be there or not. It's weaponized empathy. So there's a lot of people who feel bad maybe for the history of Utah, um, which, I mean, everyone has a history. And for me, history, you teach the good, the bad, and the beautiful, but you have to teach it all. And my experience in Utah has not been, I haven't ran into a lot of racist situations. The most that I have are the people who would consider me their kind. Um, and they do go out of their way to slander the things that I say and the things I stand for. Um, so that was diversity, equity, and then inclusion. Inclusion means that you center around some at the exclusion of others. So I don't know if you have a picture of the wheel. If you look up, Adam, I don't know if you can, but the privilege wheel, I can explain it.
Is it on your Twitter?
No. So, okay. So the privilege wheel, actually, it might be somewhere. The privilege wheel would be in the center. It would say those with the most privilege are the white, male, cisgender, Christian, European heritage, educated. Those are the most privileged people. And because they're the most privileged, they are the most phobic. They're the most likely to be phobic of whatever the issue is. That's a pretty good example. Underneath the big one there's one right there in the middle, and that's pretty much it. But anyway, so this is a picture of the wheel. And then on the outside, the wheel is those people who do not fit into those categories. There you go. Marginalized. So those are the marginalized people. Now, this is in ethnic studies curriculum. So we think of ethnic studies, which is kind of my specialty. We think of ethnic studies as you're coming in and you're learning about diverse voices and heroes of history, and especially the people who've lived in Utah and what they've been through, and we celebrate them. But there is no celebration in actual ethnic studies. There are people who are trying to create something other than liberated ethnic studies, but liberated ethnic studies literally comes from Black liberation ideology. So it literally comes from Black power. It literally comes from the 1960s Black Panther movement. And now we're bringing that into our schools. But not only Black versus white, also ableism versus whether or not you disability or gender or even climate are all being brought into the schools under the name of who's oppressed and who's not.
Interesting. Wow. So what makes you the ideal person to replace a sitting state school board member, Randy Booth?
Well,
Why should people vote for you? Well, delegates specifically. Why should a delegate vote for you over somebody who's been in that position for years?
right, or somebody who doesn't have the backing of having worked for BYU for a very, very long time. One, I bring a fresh perspective. I don't believe that any child. I don't believe that any child is incapable of excellence. I believe excellence is defined on the individual, and what we're doing is looking at people in the collectives. So, what we just recently did last week, or what the school board did, we moved to repeal R277-3 I want to say 328. I could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong about that, but we moved to repeal that because it said that you can't teach an ideology as fact. And it had language in it that brought in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Even though the bill was to basically keep that out, they put language in to put it in. Um, Probably one of the more shocking things that they did is the opening of the meeting. They started with people with disabilities. They started talking about unified schools and saying how important inclusion was for unified schools, which unified schools is yeah, it's disability. It's like Special Olympics. And of course, any single kid who is in that situation needs those extra supports. But to follow that up and then to have all of these black and brown representatives talking about representatives being students um, and Darlene McDonald and what's his name with the skunk head? Um, uh,
Curtis Linton,
yeah,
the
Curtis
White Knight.
Linton, right? So Curtis Linton, it, in my opinion, it looked very performative.
Mm-hmm.
And again, follow the money. Courageous Conversations, I believe it's Courageous Conversations, is a company, a DEI company owned by Curtis Linton, who got up and talked about how he's adopted two black children and his life as a white man is so very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that I bring to the table, obviously, is um, obviously I'm not white. Go figure. I'm half white, and I think that that's important that people recognize because I do not see one side as better than the other. I'm both. So, and I also don't see that in any. I don't see that in any other human being. Like I just see people as being beautiful and being diverse, and the color of your skin does not limit you or give you an advantage. At least it shouldn't. It should
Mm-hmm.
just be the person that you are and the merit that you bring. But the
For
other
sure.
thing is, when you talk about diversity, is, and you know this, I'm from the foster system. I grew up in the most underprivileged situations that you could ever imagine. And yet, that didn't stop me from being intelligent. It didn't stop me from being articulate. It didn't stop me from being a positive human being who tries to bring a light into the room. So to say that I'm somehow weakened and you need to lower the standard, I think that's the worst thing that you can do for somebody who has grown up in a hard life.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you should be saying, you know, it's going to be hard. I'm here with you and I'm going to help you get there. Not you no longer have the standard.
Mm.
You know, one example is when I was in 8th grade, I had a teacher, I couldn't do algebra. And I had a teacher who said, if you study and get past this one test, I'll pass you for the rest of the year because your life is hard. So to this very day, we have a tutor for our son when it comes to math. Sorry to out you, Adam. But yes.
So I got the up on the screen here. I've got an article from the Salt Fake Tribune, and they are relishing in uh, the repeal attempt failure from the other day that you brought up.
Right.
Utah Public Schools educational equity rule survives repeal attempt after the state school board vote. Opponents argued the rule didn't comport with state law, but a majority of board members and their legal counsel disagreed. Um, can you kind of walk us through what this rule was and why we're trying to get it repealed?
Sure. First off, the rule was created by a Hispanic representative who has found it hard to have his kids go to school and not have to listen to things that he does not agree with, that his values don't align with. So they wanted our schools, they don't want basically CRT in our schools. And people will say, well, CRT is a college level thing that's brought in it's brought in at law level. But let me be clear. Christine Sleater, who is the head of ethnic studies, and she's the top advisor. You can watch her on YouTube give a full speech, but the first thing that she says is that ethnic studies, when done correctly, is a double helix. The first part of that helix is to teach a child their level of oppression, whoever that child is. So basically, how I put this is that um, the same very, very bad practices that have been done to African Americans since about the 1930s to destroy their confidence, to destroy their home lives, are now coming for every other child. So if it can't be by race, then it's going to be by gender. And this is the stuff that's happening. And what we wanted to do was say, no, you can't do this. It's not even constitutional. This is wrong. And I can prove to you it's wrong. I happen to have a curriculum that was created here in Utah um, that makes it very clear that the goal is absolutely to teach our children how to become activists. It starts with the beginning. The first thing the kids are supposed to learn is what is whiteness and how they can address their implicit bias. That's the first thing that they learn. Then it talks about their experts and their advisors in the book, and it has Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo and many socialists all the way through the book, and no other perspective. Then it talks specifically about conservatives and says that conservatives in Loudoun County, Virginia, remember, this book is for 11th and 12th graders. It's called an ethnic studies survey because the goal is to make sure that your kids are having those conversations, that the teacher is leading them, mentoring them into changing. And that change is to embrace a progressive ideology. There's no balance. I have no problem if somebody wants to teach what critical race theory is in the classroom and somebody wants to teach, so say they want to teach W.E.B. Du Bois and they also want to teach George Washington Carver. Fine, as long as you let those kids critically think, and we're removing that. And then after those first pages, it's chapter after chapter of how every race has been colonized and oppressed by America and what America owes to the places that have been colonized or oppressed.
Wow. Okay. Governor Cox, I don't know if you heard me talking earlier. He came out recently against these DEI statements being required by local universities for people that are looking to get hired, and he called them discriminatory and bordering on evil.
Right.
Got called out, rightly so, from a couple of different angles on that. But personally, I think it's fake. It's kind of a fake effort for him to appear to be more conservative than he actually is. What would he need to do? What would Governor Cox need to do to make a genuine effort? I know that he's got Michelle Loveday working at the state level on as like an ethnic studies advisor. I know he's got Abby Cox has been pushing a lot of initiatives for these DEI kind of things in schools. What would to be genuine? Um, what would what would make a more a real effort? What would Governor Cox have to do instead of this fake coming out against these initiatives?
Sure.
What would constitute, in your eyes, something to say, hey, Governor Cox actually is waking up and seeing the detrimental effects of these policies? What would that look like in your eyes?
Well, we'll see how Wednesday's bill goes. Wednesday's bill, it's not perfect, but I know the people who are working on it, and they're working really, really hard to bring equality, to say that on a needs based, that people can get, on an individual needs based, people can get what they need. I don't know that Governor Cox could change my opinion because I believe progressive ideology tends to believe uh, that they know better for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you believe that, as one of the school board members said, um, conservatives don't really have conservatives and Republicans are not the same, and you have very little
Mm-hmm.
respect for conservatives because, whatever reason. Basically, to be blunt, it seems like they believe we're not as intelligent. Um, and so when you believe that you get to control how other people think, and I think the most concerning thing is um, Abby Cox's Abby Cox's focus on social and emotional learning. Social and emotional learning really is social and emotional compliance. If you look at the first page or the paper that gets sent home to parents, it looks wonderful. Like you're just teaching your kid how to cope after, again, the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you go into Castle and you go into the search line and you type in equity, you will see that their goals are the exact same goals as ethnic studies.
Mm-hmm.
That same thing of turning your child into an activist. If you watch and see the initiatives to make sure that kids are volunteering, I have no problem. You know, we have a kid who's still in Scouts, and we absolutely support Scouts. But that should be the family's decision, not the government's. So, for me, the fact that we moved here to a red state, expecting small government and getting enormous government. Um, One of the things I'm most concerned about is this big push for mental health that he just recently came out with.
Mm-hmm.
Because I work with people, again, across the nation and internationally.
What makes that a bad thing? Like,
Yeah, sure. So I work with people across the nation and internationally who are um, sounding the alarm on what's happening in mental health. And what's happening in mental health is these new counselors, one, they're being turned out um, without without that intention of becoming healers. So one thing that my friend Leslie Boyce was told was that we are not creating people who will be able to serve the Trump supporter.
hmm.
That was that's alarming because there's a lot of them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's alarming that there wouldn't be services and that people are created to not have services. Another thing is the first thing a counselor is supposed to do is address their power dynamics in the room.
Hmm.
So if I came in and said my husband drives me crazy and I need to see a therapist, they would be directed to focus on my race. Is my race the reason why my husband drives me crazy?
Hmm.
Right? So, um, and so with our kids, they're being directed to become change makers. This is all over their sites. And that's why it's a problem. I find it a problem. I find the power of suggestion a problem. So when you drive down the road and you see signs like, let me hold your gun or let me hold your pills until you feel okay,
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't find those encouraging. I find those almost, I don't know. I mean, kind of suggestive, just in that, you're driving down the road, you feel fine, and you're a teenager, and then all of a sudden you look up and you see that sign, and it just puts it in your head.
For
So,
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense. So you're saying that more awareness on that might not be a good thing, or what?
I think that we need to return to best practices. I do not believe that best practices for mental health are letting kids leave the classroom and snuggle with a stuffed animal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I believe that best practices are turning off the screen, you know, going a little bit backwards.
Is
Putting
that
the
real though? I mean, are kids being allowed to go and snuggle with a stuffed animal during class?
Yes,
What's your what are you basing this off of? They're like, do you have any info on that?
I do. There's our junior highs and high schools have I can't remember what the rooms are. I want to call them safe spaces, but that's not the
Hmm.
exact term for it. But they're like a cool down room.
Okay.
They've got couches, and sometimes you can go in there just for like 10 minutes at a time. But
Hmm.
if our goal is to teach our kids to be resilient,
Mm-hmm.
then I think we have to go back to common sense. What really teaches resilience? Telling a kid that you can't handle 50 minutes in a class,
Mm-hmm.
because you still have that, what, 10 minutes between classes, right? 5 or
Yeah.
10 minutes between classes. So telling a kid that if you can't handle it, and I'll tell you, let me just give you one example. I was a sub in Nebo School District, and in one of my high school classes, a girl came up to me and she was shaking and just very kind of twitchy. And she came up to me and she just put her cell phone in my face, and it said, "I can leave the classroom for any reason due to my anxiety." And so I said, "Oh, okay." And then I began to teach the class. And as I taught the class, I'm not a sub who would sit back and do nothing. I'm the kind of sub who like engages the kids. So I noticed that they were on the computer, they weren't actually reading the book. And of course, I brought candy because teenagers. And so I bring this candy in, and I said, "Okay, who wants to read?" And they're like, "Seriously?" And they actually began to get excited about the idea of reading the actual book. And they were reading Tom Sawyer, and they
Hmm.
were skipping over the N word. And I told them, "Why do you need to skip over the N word? It was written by the author, but think about who uses it in this book." And so we had deeper conversations, which I think is really helpful for the kids. You
Hmm.
know, that's what I do all the time. Any chance I get, I say yes to working with kids and or young people, like college age kids. And as I'm talking and I'm having this girl read, she's reading, and I just walked by and I said, "Wow, you're a great reader. You should really try out for a play. You're amazing." Just those little bits of lifting up their self-esteem. And you watched her going in that one class from shaking to calming down and being really excited, and she actually read more than anyone else in the class.
Hmm.
So that's what I mean by we need to return to to connection, because these kids are just opening up a laptop, even starting in first grade. They're just opening up a laptop. They're screening. They're getting screened. They grab their little lanyard. It screens them. The computer tells them what they're doing today. First grade. That's not best practices for kids. I don't think it's healthy.
Best. Speaking of best practices, what do you think of this new push by the governor to eliminate cell phones in schools by students?
Adam, I'm supposed to be vague on these answers. Okay. I have seen the kids really get distracted and not pay attention at all with the phones. I support no phones in the class if there's a camera in the classroom, or even if the fact is that some of the things that are happening in class we have to have documentation of. And that's what I get. I get many calls from parents, um, texts, emails, pictures from people saying, "Why is this happening?"
Hmm.
And if we don't have proof, it's a child's word against an adult. And if the adult is an activist, which, let me be clear, I do not believe every single teacher is an activist. I do not believe every administrator is an activist. But I do believe we have some. And when we have them, the kids are helpless.
I looked at it. My reaction was, Governor Cox comes out on something that you'd think would be a relatively easy issue, but then he just missed the mark. Like, I think that, from my opinion, schools need more authority to take away the phone when it becomes a distraction. But like these activist teachers that were on video, actually here in Lehigh, Utah, maybe a year or two ago, of one crazy teacher, saying, uh, all kinds of anti-Trump stuff and pushing her agenda on the kids, and we only saw that because the kids happen to have their phones. And then there's also the school shooting aspect of it, having or whatever emergency that would be happening. It's ideal, in my opinion, to have for a kid to have access to their phone, but I think that we need to reiterate and reinforce the authority of our teachers to take away those phones. And when they are a distraction, or a kid is doing stuff, they need to be able to take those away.
I
But
would agree, except for there are certain groups of teachers that you can see their posts on
mhm,
Facebook who do have an agenda,
mhm.
and making sure that your kids don't have a phone is part of their
Yeah.
goal.
Well, let's see if let's open up the phone lines here. I'm not sure if with our technical difficulties, if everything's working, but let's open the phone lines here to take calls. Hang on just 1 second while we go into.
Here's my number. You used to call me on the cell phone. So call me maybe. I've just received a call.
To the Bronx. Up next, great to have you on the network. Hi.
Hello.
To hang up that computer call.
I'm out of here. Bye. Bye. Okay?
Good day.
Saw you shaking your head there. You didn't like Obama at the end of my bumper?
You're gonna get me in trouble.
So yeah, the phones are open. People can call in at 385-899-2134. If anybody's out there, if anybody's listening, if anybody has any questions for Carrie Bartholemew, running for state school board, District 13 here in Utah County. If you have any questions for her or questions for the show, if we missed anything, if we got something totally wrong, if our opinion sucks, if it's garbage, give us a call. We'd love to know. Or you can send in a chat. So I had a bunch of questions on Facebook for my other guest that was planned, but we'll have to reschedule for that one. So it was going to be good. What do you think about this push it seems like there's a real push out there to kind of drive a wedge between the parent and the student,
Yes.
and kind of make the state the de facto parent.
Whisk, whole child, whole school.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the goal is there? Why would somebody want to separate why would somebody want to sever that bond between parents and students?
Well, I think that parents are the safeguard. I think ideally parents are the one person in the kid's life. That means not that there aren't other people in their lives, but they're the one person. They're the person that they can come to and say, I really, really screwed up, help me. And they're there for them. And I think one of the things I was talking to a young person today who's going to help with my campaign, and they said, we just feel without hope. That's it. We feel without hope. Our teachers are saying things like, the economy is so bad, you're never going to own a home. The last generation took that from you. Or parents can be the people who tell them the truth and who keep them kind of based in reality. And I think that if the goal is allegiance to the state, which is definitely what ethnic studies looks like, even on creating my campaigns, flyers and things like that, I go over to Canva and it's so biased.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, just in the little poster signs, right? They're the fists up in the air. They're vote so you have a choice or a voice, and it's always that Marxist fist up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't unsee that kind of agenda. And it's really sad because I think a lot of people just don't know. and a lot of people don't want to know, but I think a lot of people are asleep. And the most important thing that we can do is preserve our families.
Hmm. Yeah. There, I think there is a real push, to say that the children belong to the state.
Yeah.
They belong to the state. One of the things we saw in Washington State was this new push for transgenderism, where they're indoctrinating the kids. They're forcing this new Planned Parenthood sex ed curriculum onto the kids and indoctrinating them and teaching them about it. And then uh, if the kid is has decides they want special pronouns, or they want to be a different gender, the school will change their name and their pronouns on the school rolls, and address the kid how they identify, and give them a costume change, and all outside of the parents' knowledge. Letting them change clothes, letting them change identity, essentially, before and after school, and keeping the parents in the dark about this. And then, if the parents are not for it, the state can actually take their children away. If the parents decide they don't want to support that, they don't want to transition their child, and the parents will find out months, or years down the road after this stuff has been happening. And they find out after the fact that their son is now going by, a girl's name and wearing girls' clothes at school. And if the parents aren't supportive of it, that's child abuse. And they are forcing people who live in the state to participate in this system where they're if just by living there and paying taxes, you're forced to actually pay, your taxes are being used for the mutilation of children by the state, who is enabling this gender transition. And if the parents have insurance, they're being forced to pay for it, for this gender transition, without any choice in the matter. And they're being forced to do it. Their insurance companies are restricted from even notifying the parents when this is happening. And if the parents don't have insurance, the state is stepping up and paying for these with tax dollars. It really seems like, uh, that the state, at least in Washington State, is really driving towards the idea that the state owns the children, that the state kind of is um, above the parents as far as authority over the children.
We
And
don't have any rights if not given to us by
we
the state. Yeah.
exactly. And then they're also becoming basically a safe harbor for kids from other states, where if they
Mhm.
find out that a kid from another state can flee to Washington and be put into the foster care system if their parents in another state don't support them transitioning genders. And so they're actually not only taking away the rights of parents in their own state, and coming in between, dividing the parents from the students, but also taking away the rights of parents from other states, where their kid becomes a ward of a state they don't even live in. You
So
know,
I think one important issue to think about here, um, is the coming from a place of compassion. Okay, these kids are exposed, whether they're exposed on social media or whether they're exposed in the classroom or whether they're exposed by like a para educator or a recess aide who is really pushing and favors the kids who fit into that category. And that's that's the language of queer, right? And so queer does not mean anti-gay, anti-lesbian. What queer means is the old definition. If you had a stick and you twisted the stick, it's queer. So we're twisting the mind. We're making it so that there's no objective truth. It's really quite horrifying. But making it so that there's no objective truth. Now, the thing where the compassion needs to come from is the group most likely to do this, statistically speaking, are the young people the foster kids.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the people who don't have that one person. So the foster kids do this because, they're going to be special. And then what's horrifying, there are people who will go through the process, and even before they get home, they have regrets. And then their love bombing is over. They're completely on their own, and there's no support for them because them existing, their stories existing, are
Mm-hmm.
a threat to a movement. So I think that's a really important thing that we oftentimes forget when having the discussion. So it's crazy to me that we're in this place. It's crazy to me that Utah has 127% increase. But you can't forget those kids who've gone through this and had regret and have
Mm-hmm.
no one to support them.
Yep. I was listening to one of these detransitioners, and they were talking about the big lie in the pro trans community. The big lie of that we need to embrace, and we need to confer. We need to affirm these kids, otherwise they're going to commit suicide. And they were talking about how that's the big lie, is that not affirming them is going to cause these kids to commit suicide, when the reality of the situation is that these kids' parents, their teachers, and their so-called friends that are surrounding them, affirming their psychosis, essentially. And then when the genetic reality sets in, that everybody around them has been lying to them, that and telling them that they can become something that they're not, and telling them that they can mutilate their body and take and inject chemicals into their body, and that they will become something that they're genetically unable of becoming. And when that genetic reality sets in, and they realize that the people that were supposed to be looking out for them, the people that were supposed to have their back, and make sure that they don't stumble, and make a life altering mistake, those very people encouraged to the point where they've done irreversible damage to themselves, and that reality sets in, and that's the main driving factor for suicide in these young kids. And it just it's insane to think about how far we've come when you think about just a couple of years ago. Like, the stuff that's happening right now with these states, transitioning people's kids without their knowledge or permission, and these 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 schools driving the wedge between parents and students. 5 years ago, we would have looked at this stuff and said that's crazy. That'll never happen. And
Right.
now here we are today, where this stuff is everywhere, and it's up to us. It's up to the citizens to stand up and fight against this stuff, because it's been happening. It's been brought in and forced upon us, and our leaders, the people we've elected, to oversee the curriculum in our schools, to oversee the information that we're going to be programming into the most innocent among us. The people that we entrusted with this huge responsibility, and for years they've been going behind our backs and pushing this divisive agenda, permanently destructive agenda onto our kids, unbeknownst to us. And now we see this, and we are faced with a situation where we have to step up and take our country back. And that's why it's so important for people to get involved in our local elections, in our state and city elections. We need to take over our city council and our state legislature, As far as I'm a big Trump supporter, I'm Trump 2024 all the way. But at the end of the day, what what comes through our schools textbooks is more important than the guy that sits in the chair in the White House. And so you have my support, obviously, but I think it takes a lot of courage for people to stand up, and I think that um, we need more people like you that are willing to stand up and put themselves out there and run for office and speak truth to the system, and try and wrestle back that power from the people that have been doing us wrong. And so I really hope that I wish a lot of success on your campaign, but I really hope that more people will step up and and become a delegate to support candidates like you. We need people. We need conservatives. We need good, strong Utah conservatives to become delegates to support people like you in convention. So somebody can go
Right.
uh, and become a delegate in their neighborhood. They're essentially the representative for their neighborhood. They can then go to the convention this year and they can stand up and they can say, I vote for Kerry Bartholomew for District 13. I want Kerry Bartholomew to represent my family and represent, my students at the state school board level. And uh, we need people that are willing to, the time has passed. They can't run for office right now, but they can step up. They can become a delegate, and they can vote for people like you, people like Natalie Klein, people like Trevor Lee in the state legislature. Good, solid conservatives that are going to stand up for our students and stand up and protect women's rights and stand up and protect our students here in the state, because the state and the existing school board, the people that we're running against, don't seem to be doing the job. And so where can I know that your campaign's just getting started, but where can people find you if they want to follow your work or just kind of support your campaign, or know when you do have a way for people to support your campaign? Where can they find your info so that they can keep tabs on your campaign?
Sure. My campaign slogan is Carrie Cares, and so my Facebook will be um, Carrie for Utah Kids, and that will be also Instagram. And then, if people really want to understand what it is that we're facing, and I always bring the facts. I don't just sit and bloviate. I always um, go through their texts, and that is at Carib Marcel, Be Not Afraid on YouTube. And that's about to become a podcast as well.
So that was Carib, whoops,
Which is really sad.
YouTube.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion makes it so that I need to have a different name for my public face.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
So here it is. This is Be Not Afraid with Carib Marcel on YouTube. You've got, how many videos do you have now? Looks like you've got
I have 101.
101 videos, and dissecting these things like critical race theory and diversity, equity, inclusion, and Cassell, and all these things where,
That one that
you know,
says the CRT issue is about the bill that
okay,
is about the repeal that did not go through.
got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, if people want to get into the nitty gritty and really definitely, get some more information that they can speak with knowledge on the subject. Um, somebody on the chat called you the James Lindsay of Utah. So you should
I was
be
just on stage
honored
with him
there.
this week.
Yeah, yep. You're just featured in we had Julie Beeling on last week from Beneath Sheep's Clothing. I know you're in that movie, but yeah, people need to speak up, and we need people to support these grassroots candidates that are running to really improve the situations for our children and for the future. And we need more people that are willing to step up and run for office, but we also need people that are willing to step up and support the candidates who have filed. There are a lot of good candidates in the race this year, and Carib is just one of those. And so we need people to help, and we need everybody to pitch in. It's going to take everybody to fix the situation that we're in here in our country. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you coming on the show, Carrie. Good luck on your campaign.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for tuning in to KMMU. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. I love you guys. Thanks for watching the show. And tune in next week. Hopefully we'll have the technical issues figured out and a full slate of guests here. So thanks for tuning into the show, and have a great day.
Good show. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Dwayne.
Oh, well, I'm just here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
That's the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The great
we
and
didn't get any
powerful
calls.
Oz.
We didn't get any calls, but we got it. Next week will be next week's a new week. So we'll go from there.
Well, and one of the things that I'm thinking is I'm going to start sending out we're going to be working